The IBM ScrollPoint mouse is an obscure little mouse that debuted in 1998 to replace the standard scroll wheel. A scroll wheel only operates vertically, while the ScrollPoint mechanism will allow 360-degree scrolling on the X and Y axis. The speed of the scrolling is determined by how much pressure is applied on it, meaning they don't constantly have to bring your finger from the top to the bottom or from the bottom to the top of a scroll wheel to keep moving, which can be tiresome. If you've ever used a ThinkPad in your life, this might seem familiar, because the ScrollPoint is based off of the TrackPoint that has been on ThinkPads since 1992 to replace the mouse and even the trackpad. The TrackPoint also offers 360-degree scrolling by holding the middle click and then moving the TrackPoint left, right, up, or down. Wanted to learn more, I found a thread on a forum for keyboard enthusiasts called GeekHack that talked about how rare and hard to find a ScrollPoint Pro was. This was back in 2010, so I looked on eBay and found a pretty good deal for it, so I felt like I had to pick it up. Especially since there's not a single video on YouTube about the ScrollPoint, so I had to make one myself. This is the only ScrollPoint Pro listing on eBay for my country. However, there's a lot more of the original ScrollPoint, so I wanted to buy those as well to compare. There are two versions, the mechanical mouse that has a ball, and the optical mouse that uses a laser. The newer one also has a glowing ScrollPoint, which is also cool, I guess. Once I got them in the mail, I unboxed them all together so I can record my first impressions of the mice. The first thing I immediately noticed is that the left and right mouse buttons are less wide than regular mouses, in order to fit the ScrollPoint. The middle click on a non-pose is right above the ScrollPoint itself. The older one has a ball on the bottom, and the ScrollPoint feels a bit more stiff, while the newer one has an optical sensor, and the ScrollPoint feels a bit more light and easier to move. Looking at the pros, they're a lot bigger and more ergonomic, which I prefer. The ScrollPoint is also wider than the non-pose. The middle click isn't in between the left and right buttons, but instead next to the thumb on the side, which seemed kinda strange at first. If you're planning to use this mouse, you should also get the drivers for the device you can get at this website. Go down, and you'll see all the software and drivers you need. Really this one. But if you're using Linux, maybe this will help. Now the mouse that I have, and that the ScrollPoint mouses will have to compare themselves to, is the Logitech MX Master. Now this is definitely the best mouse I have used so far, and it costs $60 for me, but usually costs about $80 to $100. So it's definitely one of the most expensive mice you can find, which is why I bought it, knowing that I'd have to live up to a high quality. Now this has a vertical scroll wheel, but it also has a horizontal scroll wheel, which as you can guess it scrolls horizontally. So I think it'll be interesting to compare this to the ScrollPoint, since it also has a solution to the fact that the scroll wheel cannot scroll horizontally. And although I want the ScrollPoint to do well, I also kinda don't want it to be better than this because I paid $60 for this, and I kinda want it to be the best. But let's go ahead and plug in the ScrollPoint and see how well it does. Now after you install the drivers, you can plug it in and start using it. And immediately I remember why I don't like wired mouse. I'm using it and it works, but the first thing I notice is how loud it is. Listen to this. That's the sound of the ball inside, which is pretty heavy and not well secured compared to other ball mice I've used. That's definitely the worst aspect of this mouse. So it works fine, but it's a lot more sensitive than most people would think. Very little movement is required to scroll, as you can see. And here is the newer one that has a little optical laser at the bottom. Now, immediately you don't hear the sound of the ball moving when you raise it, which is way better. And the light, it's not that bad as you can see in the video, but if you don't like that, then you don't like that. I noticed that although it's more light and less stiff, it's not as sensitive, so I have to push a lot more in order to scroll. See this? And even when I push it all the way, it doesn't scroll that fast. Compare it to the older mouse with the mechanical ball that's more stiff. Look how fast it scrolls. It scrolls way faster because it's more sensitive. Now of these two mice, the older one that has a more sensitive scroll point and the newer one that has a less sensitive scroll point, I actually prefer the older one. The newer one might be easier for newcomers, and the older one has a slightly higher learning curve. But once you learn how to use the sensitivity, it actually is better for browsing websites and can get you around places faster, which I feel like is more useful. Although it's harder to get more precise movements, once you learn it, I feel like it's better. Immediately using the horizontal scroll wheel, I realized some cool applications you can use with it, such as scrolling through a video on YouTube. Now remember, this is the less sensitive one. On the more sensitive one, it's even harder. But it scrolls really fastly through the video. When using Photoshop, it also scrolls left and right pretty easily. Now I put on the Pro, and it definitely is better. It feels better. It wraps around your hand better. The mouse ball is better. It's not as loud. You can't even hear it. The sensitivity is just right. It legitimately feels like a balance between the two. I'm not exaggerating. It goes fast, but not too fast. It's sensitive, but not too sensitive. It feels like they really got the Pro out of this. I thought middle clicking would be weird, but it just was way better than having to go over here with your other finger. Let's talk about middle clicks. So here, I feel like the older mouse is less comfortable, and that's for one good reason. You also, if you want to scroll, you have to have your finger in a claw position like this. In the middle click, you have to do this. So when you're browsing a website, you always have your finger up here, which isn't as comfortable. However, here, it's pretty far away from your hand, and it's a lot bigger. So your mouse is always resting, and it's more comfortable. And middle click is down here. As someone who has a track point on his ThinkPad laptop, and even has a track point on his keyboard, you have to ask, is it better than the track point? And the answer is yes. Definitely more comfortable than the track point. It feels like the next evolution. If I had to choose, I would choose this. Even the older ones, the non-pros, I'd rather scroll with that than this. It's very nice, and I loved it so much that I maybe buy this keyboard so I can do that scrolling on here. But overall, this is just better. Now here comes a tough comparison. IBM ScrollPoint Pro or the Logitech MX Master. Will I replace this mouse? Now, if we're talking about scroll, I think it's obvious which one wins. This one. Immediately the best in scrolling technology ever. If you're going to buy a mouse, this is a ScrollPoint mouse, This is what you're going to get. But the truth is that there is no reason to have a horizontal scroll. If you're doing something like photo editing in Photoshop or video editing, then yes, I will use this. But it's so rare. For the average person, you really don't need a horizontal scroll wheel. If we're talking about size and comfort, this one does feel really comfortable, but the way that the back is shaped, there's not enough weight back here, so my hand has to go all the way around. My fingers go over here, so you just have to go back a little, but just let my hand rest on the back. This one has more weight in the back, so when I wrap around, my fingers fit perfectly, and my hand doesn't touch the bottom as much. There's also more support on the side for the side fingers. Well, this one, although it has support, not as much. This one has back and forth, this one doesn't. This one has a sum button, this one doesn't. I hate to say it, but I'm just gonna have to stick with this one. I think I'll alternate, because I don't want to give this up. I definitely love this. I think I'm gonna alternate between the two, because that's what I've been doing while reviewing this. But I still think this is just a better mouse overall. Better sliding. Yeah, but this is definitely my second favorite mouse of all time. Definitely second favorite mouse. I'm going to be using this still. Maybe I'll have both of them. Let's alternate. Because it just feels so good to use. I love this mouse, and I recommend it to everyone. If you can get it for $10 like I did, get it. Honestly. So that's my video on the ScrollPoint and ScrollPoint Pro mouse. I hope you liked it. I hope it might help you make an informed decision on learning about this mouse, maybe buying it. I definitely would recommend it to everyone. The Pro, of course. I actually don't think the regular ones are even worth buying, honestly. They're just not that good, just not that well made. If you want to ask me more questions, just leave in the comments about the mouse itself. It's kind of obscure, but yeah, hope you like it.